Today's lesson is choux paste. To make choux paste, put water and salt, as well as cubed butter in a large pot. Bring these ingredients up to a boil on high heat. Stir frequently to help melt the butter. Once the mixture comes to a rolling boil, remove the pot from the heat. Add the bread flour in all at once. Then mix this with a wooden spoon until the dough comes together. Turn the burner back on to medium-low heat and put the pot back on. Cook the choux paste, stirring constantly for 2 to 3 minutes. Cooking the dough will allow the flour to gelatinize so it can absorb the eggs. The moisture in the eggs is what gives choux paste its rise in the oven. The choux paste is ready when it begins to form a ball and lose its wet appearance. It will also leave a white skin at the bottom of the pot. Transfer the hot choux paste to a mixer with a paddle attachment. Mix the dough on low speed until it cools to 65 degrees Celsius. We do this so that when we add the eggs, we don't cook them. Begin to add the eggs to the choux paste in 3 stages. Mix on medium speed until each addition of eggs is thoroughly incorporated before adding the next. This is so the dough doesn't become lumpy. Scrape down the bowl before adding each addition of eggs. You will begin to see with the second addition of eggs that the consistency of the choux paste has softened significantly. Add the last addition of eggs a bit at a time. Check the consistency of the dough as you mix. You should be able to lift your paddle from the dough and have it fall in a completely unbroken ribbon. If it breaks, add 1 more egg and mix again. You can always thin a thick choux paste with a bit of milk, but you can't thicken cooked choux paste by adding uncooked flour. When the shoe paste is ready, it will look like this, falling in a slow, steady stream from your paddle, much like molten lava. To pipe choux, you can use either a star tip or a plain piping tip. Fill the piping bag halfway full. Don't overfill the bag, as you have less control when you pipe. Use a plastic bench scraper to push the dough forward into the piping bag. To pipe eclairs in a uniform length, it's helpful to draw a template. Eclairs can be any length you choose, but for these ones, the template is 4 inches long. Draw a series of 4-inch long rows on a piece of parchment paper and leave 1 inch between each row. Mark the areas on the parchment that you will not be piping in, so you don't get confused. Flip the parchment upside down so the lead does not touch the dough. Use a bit of choux paste in each corner of the baking tray to adhere to the parchment paper. To pipe an eclair, hold the piping bag at a 45-degree angle and extrude in a long, even line. When you're done, stop squeezing, lift the piping bag so it's straight up, and pull it backward lightly over the piped eclair. This is the same technique shown from the side. Stop piping, lift the bag, and go back over the eclair to release the dough. Pipe the eclairs on the baking tray, leaving about 1 inch between them, as they will grow in the oven. Prepare another baking tray and glue down the parchment with a bit of choux paste as you did before. This will be for your profiteroles. To pipe the profiteroles, use a number 4 plain piping tip. Fill the piping bag about halfway full . Then use a plastic bowl scraper to push it toward the tip. Twist the piping bag closed. To pipe the profiteroles, hold the piping bag straight up and down. Use your other hand to steady the bag and hold it about 1/2 inch off the surface you're piping on. Hold the tip completely steady as you extrude a round of dough. When you're done, stop squeezing and pull the tip off and to the side. If you move the tip up and down when you pipe, the choux will look like a beehive and not a round. Pipe the profiteroles on a baking tray with about 1 inch between them, as they will grow in the oven. Another shape you can pipe with choux is a round, almost like a wreath. To do this, take a circle cutter the size you want and trace rounds onto your parchment paper. Flip the parchment and pipe some circles on the baking tray. You can also add sliced almonds to the rings before baking. There's a crunchy cookie topping that you can bake on choux paste called craquelin. To make craquelin, mix together brown sugar and soft butter with a spatula until well combined. Add in all-purpose flour and then salt. Combine everything together until smooth. Sprinkle a bit of flour on parchment paper. Take small sections of the dough and flatten them together onto the parchment. This will make rolling the dough much easier later and ensure that the dough is a more even thickness than if you were to roll it from a large round in the center of the parchment. Sprinkle more flour on top of the dough and then cover with another sheet of parchment. Roll the dough with your rolling pin between the two pieces of parchment. If the dough becomes too big for the parchment, you can cut the excess off and add it into places where it's needed. Then roll again to make smooth. Roll the dough until it's about 1/8 of an inch thick. Transfer it to a tray and chill for about 10 minutes in the refrigerator. To put craquelin on top of the profiteroles, you will need a circle cutter that roughly matches their size. Cut enough crackling to cover some of the profiteroles and leave some uncovered. Do this right before they go in the oven. To cut crackling for the eclairs, measure the width of one eclair. Then cut strips of crackling the same width. Now measure the length of an eclair and cut the crackling into rectangles just slightly shorter than this length. Place the rectangles of crackling on top of the eclairs right before you bake. You will bake the choux in a 400-degree Fahrenheit oven for 30 minutes. The finished product should be golden brown and crispy. The ones with crackling will have a darker brown, textured, crunchy top. Inside of your profiteroles, there should be a large empty cavity, and it should be slightly moist on the insides. The eclair should also be empty in the middle as well. To prepare fondant for dipping, first melt dark coating chocolate over a bain-marie. Next, take the white fondant and place it over a bain-marie to soften it. To help thin it out a bit, you can add a few tablespoons of simple syrup. Remember, simple syrup is equal parts sugar and water brought to a boil. You can also use plain water to thin it, but simple syrup gives a better shine to your finished product. Stir the fondant often over the bain-marie to help it warm evenly. Do not allow the fondant to get hotter than 37 degrees Celsius, or it will lose its shine on the final dipped product. Make sure you take the temperature to check. Add the melted chocolate to the soft fondant and mix well. If the fondant is still thick, you can thin it out a bit more with simple syrup or water. It should be thick enough that when you dip the eclairs or profiteroles, it will stick to the top, but not run down the sides. Test with one of your choux products in the fondant to see if the texture is correct before beginning. Dip the top of the profiterole about 1/3 of the way into the fondant and wiggle it to evenly coat. Tap the top of the profiterole to the fondant to stop it from dripping. If the fondant gets too thick when dipping, you can either stir it with a bit more water or simple syrup, or heat it very slightly over a bain-marie to soften it again. Hold the eclairs by the sides and dip them horizontally into the fondant. Hold on an angle and use a clean finger to push off the extra fondant. Set all product aside until the glaze hardens. This should only take a few minutes. To make the whipped cream filling for the choux, sift a bit of icing sugar into 35% cream to sweeten it. How much you add will depend on your taste. Whip the cream on high speed until you achieve medium peaks. The cream should still have a softness to it. Be careful not to overwhip. Now begin to cut the choux so you can fill it. For choux product that is not dipped in fondant, use a serrated knife to cut in half all the way around. Do the same with the profiteroles and the eclairs. Make sure you cut with small strokes of your knife. The choux will be very crisp and you don't want to crack it. To fill your choux, get a piping bag with a star tip. Fill it with your whipped sweetened cream. For the eclair, hold the piping bag on a 45-degree angle and pipe small circles of whipped cream over the whole length. Place the top back on a slight angle so you can see the cream. For the rings, pipe the cream in the same way. Turn the ring as you go in your hands. Put the top back on flat. For the profiterole, pipe a double rosette inside. Then place the top gently back on, leaving room to see the cream. Once the glaze has set, you can begin to cut the choux. Cut in the same way you did the others, just cut under the glaze. Be very careful as the glaze can crack easily, so apply minimal pressure with the knife. Fill the choux in the same way as you did before. An alternate way to pipe eclairs is to pipe a straight line of whipped cream right down the center. Place the tops back on with enough room between the top and the bottom so the cream is visible. Another way to fill choux product is to inject it with cream. To do this, take a very small piping tip and poke a hole in the center underneath. Then place this plain piping tip into a piping bag and fill with your sweetened whipped cream. Fill the profiterole until the cream starts oozing out, and then scrape the excess back into the bowl. These can then be dipped in fondant. Thin out your fondant again with a bit of simple syrup if it's become too thick, or reheat over a bain-marie very gently. Dip the profiteroles and allow the glaze to harden. A nice presentation is to dust all of your undipped choux with icing sugar. If you want to present your product, you can place them in muffin cups. You can use different size muffin cups for different size products. You can also fold the edges of the muffin cups to enlarge them to fit larger products. In the end, you'll have a beautiful variety of choux products to enjoy. These are best kept for just 1 to 2 days in the refrigerator.